All right, Tim Blaine Shapiro, Divorce661.com. We're back with the Divorce661 Daily Perspective, episode 22. Allergies are still killing me, if you're wondering. Last week really took its toll on me. Sorry, I have to move some things around here. Really took a toll on me. The high winds and the heat. I had such bad allergies. I was out of commission for a couple of days, and I was just getting better over the weekend. And then here comes the winds again today, and my eyes are already watering. So I'm not crying. I am just having bad allergies. So I do a lot of videos. I had a consultation today. By the way, I had 12 consultations today. So thank you for everyone who is looking to work with me. I really appreciate your support. But someone said, Tim, you do a lot of videos. How do you have time to get your job done? And I said, the answer is working 12-hour days. And that's usually at least 6 days a week. I try and take at least Sundays off just to recover and get some downtime. But I know when you hire me, you want your divorce paperwork done. It doesn't matter how many people I'm working with. I want to get your paperwork done and your case finalized with the court as soon as possible as well. All right, so here's the stats for today. 12 consultations, 2 new clients. People don't always hire us the same day, nor do I expect you to. Some people are more ready and willing and able to get the process started immediately. Some need a couple of days, some need a couple of weeks, some a couple of months, and I'm here for you when you're ready. Also submitted 3 judgments today. We completed 4 judgment packages and / settlement agreements. Again, started 2 new cases. We did 2 new QDROs. I don't talk about that too often. Started 2 new QDROs today. Whenever you have a pension, 401k, TSP, deferred comp, anything like that, and you're going to transfer money or your spouse is going to get their community property portion or a flat fee from your or each other's plans, you need to have those divided. I'm going to be talking about that in detail today. We also handled 3 rejected judgment cases today, and these were some interesting ones I want to go over with you. So we're going to be talking about long-term marriages. We're going to talk about how QDROs actually work and how they're divided. We're going to talk about the court self-help center and some of the issues people are running into. We're going to talk about a better way to serve your spouse. And a whole lot more. So let's get into it. So what do I have for you first? Okay, I have to start with this. Oh, and by the way, to the end, we have Tim's temper tantrum. People seem to like that. I think it's funny. It's just at the end, the last segment I'll talk about is just things that irritate me with what I do and mostly with the courts because I have to get a release on that somehow. So, all right. I have talked about paralegals only assisting one party. One of the consultations today, the gal said that I was the first person. She's obviously calling around, which is great. Do your due diligence. But she called around and she's probably talked to 3 or 4 other people and prior to me, and every one of them said they would only be working with her and not both spouses. And it bears to be repeated that I honestly don't see how you can get your divorce done when you are working with a paralegal service, and then your spouse has to go get a separate paralegal service or an attorney. I don't understand the mindset. I don't know how they can actually get your divorce case approved. Because here, let me walk you through this. What I see. So, am I blurry? No, I'm good. What I see is, let me give you an example of what that looks like. You hire the paralegal. They file your petition, then they have to serve your spouse. They're probably going to do it by mail, I would imagine, if you're amicable. The spouse gets their paperwork, has had no communication with this paralegal service, calls the paralegal service, says, hey, I received the paperwork. What do I do? Oh, I can't help you. I'm helping your wife. You need to go get help elsewhere. Okay, so now this say the gentleman goes and gets their own service, and they're going to say you need to do a response. You don't have to. It's amicable. They could be totally amicable. This couple the guy I talked to yesterday or today was completely amicable, but was being told that these other services would only help with one spouse. This is going to extend the time frame. It's going to extend the process. It's going to extend the cost because now the other paralegal firms just say, well, you need to file a response, and you don't. So this consultation, I had to really spend some time. It was like 30 minutes into a 15-minute consultation to explain the benefits of having one person involved as a neutral third party, as opposed to getting independent people to work for. I don't know if the game is that they end up referring to another company to handle the other spouse, but I'll tell you, the fees that these folks are charging, they're charging exactly what I'm charging or more to do half the paperwork. Doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that was one of Tim's temper tantrums last week. I have something else for you today. Okay, so I had 2 calls this week that, well, today's Tuesday. Today Tuesday. I had 2 calls today where the parties had thought that their divorce had not been finalized and they had already been remarried. I haven't talked about this in a while. I used to talk about it a lot because it came up a lot and still does, where people get remarried and then later realize that their divorce case, one of the spouses, was never finalized. So I got 2 calls. They're in a panic saying, I just realized I'm not married because my spouse's divorce from 30 years ago was apparently never went through because there's no evidence of the divorce filing. So first thing I said was, where are you checking? They said, well, we're checking with the court where the case was filed, or that we think it's filed, and nothing's coming up online. I will tell you this. I worked for the Self-Help Center for LA County for the courts. It was probably 13 years ago now. And back then, so this would have been, well, we're 2023, so call it 2010 for argument's sake. They were still just getting into having online access to things even then. But when people would come in to try and find their old divorce case, it was going to be in one of 2 locations if it was pre-computers. And it would either be on microfilm or microfiche, and whatever the difference is, and or it would be in a book, like literally a giant log book that was probably 2 feet tall by a foot wide, and this giant book. The entries were handwritten. It was kind of impressive. They were handwritten in the book. So if you wanted evidence, there was no copies of anything. They didn't have the copies that went that far back, but you could see the entry. Someone was, that's when people would write, had perfect penmanship, and it'd say, FL 100 filed on this date. It was kind of crazy. So at the end of the day, this client's divorce case was finalized. It just wasn't accessible online. They had to go into the court and they found it on microfilm and were able to make a copy that way. The other clients were not so lucky. They had started a case, thought they finished it, and it was never finalized. Now I want to talk about what that does to your existing marriage. So let me set it up for you again. You or your spouse thought you got divorced, started the process, and it never got finalized. You went ahead and get remarried, and then at some point in the marriage realized the prior divorce had not taken effect. It does not automatically make your current marriage void. It makes your current marriage voidable, meaning if you were the spouse that just found out that your spouse was never divorced, you could file a request to have the marriage annulled due to pre-existing marriage, but you'd have to go through a legal process to do that. So I haven't talked about this in a long time. We used to handle a lot of these cases. I haven't had one come up in a while, but all we have to do is go in and finalize that divorce that was initially filed however many years before you got remarried, and handle that divorce case. The only problem that can arise with those is trying to find out where the other spouse is if you've kind of lost communication, which is possible, I suppose, or likely if you've already gotten remarried. You're probably not having everyday communication with that person unless maybe you had kids or some other tie with them. So, but all we have to do is finalize the case. It doesn't mean you are not actually married or invalid marriage or anything like that. So you can just relax. Okay, now I want to talk about QDROs and how they're actually divided. If you have a pension, 401k, 403b, TSP, deferred comp, any type of company-sponsored plan, and you're going to be dividing that, like your spouse, or you might be receiving each other's community property interest due to the length of marriage from the date of marriage to date of separation, the way that's done is through a QDRO. And we do a ton of them. We also provide that service. It's in addition to the divorce process. It's a QDRO service that we offer. And we do that generally once your divorce is finalized and the orders are in with the court and it's totally final. You don't have to, but that's generally what we're doing. Some people will wait several years to do them. We'll do QDROs for people who did their divorce years ago, maybe with us, maybe not. And then they'll come back and say, either I'm getting ready close to retirement or something's happened, and then we want to start the QDRO. So that's the only way that can be done, is through the QDRO process. It allows money to be moved from your or your spouse's account into another account of like type account without any taxes, not being considered a distribution, and so forth. Then once you have the money, you can do what you want and suffer the consequences of withdrawing if that's what you're going to do. Most people will keep that as their individual retirement. Okay, next subject. The people, you people, you people doing your own divorce case. So when you have ultra complicated uh, assets, tons of assets, tons of pensions. I think I talked about this last week, but this is a new person I talked to today who I'd spoken with apparently 6 months ago. She said, "Hey, we talked 6 months ago. We went and actually have tried to do our own divorce and we're having trouble." No kidding. It's problematic. And I'm not making fun of you guys. And for some reason, you've decided you want to try and do it on your own. Might look easy. Again, I always tell you half my business that comes to me is folks that were taking over their case. You hear me talking about all these rejected judgments. These are people that try to do their own divorce and finally threw in the towel, said, "Tim, you're right. Take over our case." And we're usually able to get them finalized relatively quickly. So not only do these people have several accounts of pensions and deferred comp that needed to be divided, they had spouse support, they had children, they're trying to do child support, and they've already made so many mistakes. And they're dealing, and the next topic is, it kind of flows into the next topic of dealing with the self-help center. The self-help centers will help you, but they're doing it through a series of classes, and they're 2 to 3 months out, and you have to attend 3 different classes. So they have class 1 where you go in and they'll do the petition and summons and walk you through that. And then once that's filed, then you can move on and make an appointment for the next class. 2 to 3 month wait period for that. Get in there, do the financial disclosures, and that's where they were at. And they're trying to, we're in November, early November, and they're going in to submit a request for help with their settlement agreement. And they said it wouldn't be until January. So that's a solid 3 months. And what I told them, I said, look, first of all, and she had said that her husband had already filed a response. Totally amicable. They just wasted $435 on the response. So they're trying to, let's say their motivation for doing it themselves is to save money. Well, they're not doing that because they paid twice the amount of court fees. We do the default with written agreement, so you don't pay the response fee. But the 435, that's nothing. How much time have they been spending going down to court multiple times? First of all, it's already been 6 months and their divorce isn't done. I would have had their divorce finalized in 5 weeks. They spent money on court fees, money on gas, wasted time, down at the courthouse, frustration dealing with the bureaucracy of that. I don't get it. I said, you must like punishment, is what I told her. But I offered to take over her case. I told her about the concerns of her, at this point, now with all the pensions and so forth, that the language has to be very specific on the settlement agreement, because the QDRO, the qualified domestic relation order, which is what we talked about, QDRO to divide the pensions, that follows whatever the judgment says. If the judgment is wrong or you word it wrongly regarding the division of the pensions, then your QDROs are not going to go through either. So we talked about self-help center. By the way, I had someone not argue with me, but wondering how we don't have to deal with the self-help center. The self-help center is there. This is with all courts. If you need help with the forms, whatever, and like in LA County, it's a call center. It's terrible. Some places are by email. We had a client that hired us a week ago who said that they get an auto response when they email self-help, says, "We'll respond to you in 3 weeks." Okay, good luck with that. We bypass the self-help center. We bypass the judge in that we are doing all your documentation. Consider us your full service self-help center, independently owned, unaffiliated with the court, to bypass and streamline your divorce case. So that's how we operate. We don't have to go through the self-help. We don't have to get advice from them. In fact, they won't even talk to us anyways. We go straight to the judicial assistant, and when we submit your judgment, it's going to be reviewed and approved. Okay, I want to talk about a better way to serve your spouse, better than certified mail. So if you have your spouse is out of state and you want to serve them, there's different options. One is by certified mail, but you can also use that notice and acknowledgement of receipt. And that's what we use with all our cases. Like, our clients never get served. In fact, we don't even mail them anything. We upload the filed case to the portal. We're working with both spouses. Again, here's another benefit of working with us, because we do work with both of you, is once the case is filed, we prepare this notice of an acknowledgement form. We upload it to the portal. You electronically sign it saying you acknowledge receiving a copy of the filed case. There, you've been served. If you're out of state, doesn't matter. We still use a notice and acknowledgement. People tend to use that certified mail um, way of serving, and that's only really necessary if your spouse won't sign the notice and acknowledgement. So, but in those cases, that certified mail process of serving your spouse is very tricky with the court, because if they don't sign the actual receipt on that, the green mail thing, and you get that back, then that doesn't count. They can't, if they never sign it, if it just gets dropped off or goes to a PO box and it's not signed, that doesn't count as being served. You might as well just hire a process server at that point. But if you're doing that, you probably don't have an amicable divorce. Okay, next comments here. When one party has an attorney and you're self-represented, have an attorney just review the settlement agreement only. You don't have to retain them. So I had a call today, and she said she actually said he has 2 attorneys. Never heard of that. Maybe it's a law firm and there's 2 attorneys at the law firm. That would make more sense now that I'm saying it out loud. But she's been self-represented the entire time, which that's fine. And she called me and said, Tim, I told them, she said, I told them I want to draft her, that she wants to draft the settlement agreement because she doesn't want to be tricked by them preparing it and having some legalese that maybe she doesn't understand, and then, lose out on her rights or whatever. I said, well, first of all, you're not going to know how to prepare that correctly. And I go, second of all, if you pay me to do it, they're probably just going to go in and change it. Sorry. Excuse me. Told you those allergies. I warned you. So that said, I said, okay, you don't have to officially hire an attorney. Geez. I said, you don't have to officially hire an attorney. Just take it to your attorney, take it to a attorney, and have his attorney at their cost prepare the settlement agreement. Give them your terms in layman's terms or on a Word doc or whatnot. Say, draft the settlement agreement. Here's what I want, assuming they're going to do that. And then once they draft it, take that to an attorney, and you don't have to retain them. Just call, let them know what you want to do, and they could probably handle a review of your judgment just on an hour or so consultation. Have them review it, tell you the ins and outs, the good points, the bad points, and then you'll know if you've been duped or if they drafted the settlement agreement like you wanted, and then you could be comfortable signing it. She was happy with that. I wouldn't have been the right person for that. I think she should get an attorney, since the other spouse has an attorney to review the settlement agreement. All right. Wow. Struggling today. Okay, so talked about those old divorce cases already. Microfiche, we already talked about that. I want to talk about this rejected judgment I worked on today. So the judgment package is a combination of forms in most cases, and it might be also a written settlement agreement. You're going to have the 180, the 170, the judgment forms, the 343, like the spouse support order, 345 judgment order. And I want to talk specifically about spouse support and how you can cause a reject by not referencing the same thing on each of the forms. So on the 180, the 170, and the 343, the 343 specifically is the spouse support order. And it is what you're requesting. Is there spouse support? Yes or no? If so, how much? Are you reserving jurisdiction? Are you terminating? That's where all the details of the spouse support order go in. But the 170 and the 180 also reference the 343. So like on the 180, the boxes have to match. So here's how this went. The 343, the petitioner was going to be receiving spouse support from the respondent. So when you do that, you want to terminate, usually you want to terminate jurisdiction to the paying spouse, to the respondent. Well, on their 180, you have to mark the same thing. Terminate to, on the spouse support section on page 2 of the 180, terminate spouse support to respondent, and then based on the written agreement. The written agreement is referring to the 343. Same thing for the 170. The 170 has a section on spouse support, and you also have to make that match. So all 3 of those forms need to say jurisdiction terminated to respondent based on a written agreement. What they were doing is they were leaving it off on one, not saying to terminate to respondent, so it didn't match the 343. And on the 180, it actually said terminate to both. So just the courts are like, what do you want here? You see in the spouse support, but now you're saying it's terminated to both, and here you're seeing is just terminated to respondent. So that all has to match up, and just that's all it is. Little check boxes that can throw your whole judgment out for being rejected, and it can get confusing. So, because I had actually call them and say, "Are you? It looks like there's spouse support, but you're also saying it's terminated to both, and then you're saying it's terminated him. What do you really want to do here?" Okay, last section here. Tim's temper tantrum. This is me actually being mad, right? Not that mad. Why does it take the court so long to mail paperwork, filed paperwork, after they processed it? So we filed a document with, who is this with? San Bernardino last month. And we mailed it out and we got it back a month later, but it was filed 3 weeks ago. It actually got filed 2 days after we mailed it in, which, okay, amazing. But why did it take almost 4 weeks to get in the mail? Not why. So someone stamped it and then put it in a pile. What does it go to the mailroom? I don't know how that county works, but it's just incredible the amount of time it takes to get a single document back after it's been processed. So the processor, the clerk stamping and with the stamp and making whatever, but it takes 4 weeks to get the stuff a copy in an envelope. Only thing I can think is that they have to scan the original into their system, but they keep the original, so there's no reason to delay mailing the copy because we have to provide all the copies. We have original and copy. They stamp both of them. They keep the original, mail us the copy. Why does it take so long? That was what was frustrating today, because it really delays us being able to finalize your divorce case for all these counties that we cannot we cannot e-file anything. Like I just took a case yesterday, Solano County. They don't even come up on the e-file system. All by mail. It just really drags out the process. At least with some courts, or I'd say 80% of them, they'll allow us to at least file the petition. So within a few days, we'll get the case filed. I have a Sacramento case, or San Francisco, I can't remember. We mailed out 3 weeks ago. We sent it certified, not certified, but we sent it priority mail so we get evidence it gets here in 2 days. I still don't have it back. So we're just waiting to get that back because I can't prep anything until we have the case number and we know the date it was filed and all that good stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed the Daily Perspective episode 22 today. I'm sorry for coughing on you, and we will see you tomorrow. You have a great day. And if you're looking for help with your divorce,